perhaps most importantly, the first impact of this change that is going to happen will be in the exhibition end of the business. That is where they're going to build more posh, expensive theaters to cater to this large body of young people in big cities like Bangalore or Delhi or Madras. With the rise of the computer industry in India, and I don't know whether you know this, India has one of the largest pools of scientific labor. If you go to Bangalore now and go to MG Road, which is the posh area of the city, every coffee shop is filled with these early 20s people who look like early 20s people here in Vancouver or Chicago. And their consumption patterns are almost identical to what we do here. They buy designer clothes, they consume cappuccino, and they go to multiplexes to watch expensively made films, both from Hollywood as well as from the Indian movie industry. So I'm going to have you take a look at this. Now, there are masses and classes, as Bombay film industry would talk about them. The masses are the ones that go to the tent cinema or the other kind of cinema where 1,700 seat capacity, and the front seats are the cheapest and the seats in the back are the most expensive. But these theaters that are emerging in the big cities now, this is a company called PVR Cinemas in Bangalore, which has a 11-screen complex that came about recently. And they have these really luxury red plush seats, and the well-dressed woman, like in an airline, which airlines don't do anymore, by the way, comes to you to serve your favorite beverage that you can buy. You can even have wine and other beverages there. If you buy food with your ticket, it costs 500 rupees to go sit in one of these seats. And 500 rupees, you can imagine who would be able to go there. Obviously, this is not intended for somebody who works in your house. It is intended for that propertied class that is at the upper, the creme de la creme of Indian society. Now, in this situation, masses and classes don't mingle. This is created exclusively for this class, where the masses would be very actively engaged with the film, whereas this class of people would not talk back to this screen. And they would actually try to hush you in big theaters, which wouldn't work, of course. Now, with the emergence of theaters like this, my argument is that the whole viewing experience of an Indian cinema is changing. And not that this is going to become the dominant phenomena, of course, because you have nearly 500,000 villages in the country, and there are different kinds of producers who make different kinds of films, and consequently, there will be niche markets that would develop. So a Govinda film is not going to cater to this audience. A Govinda film, those of you who know Govinda's work, he sings and dances and performs fights himself, and he is a very popular star with the working classes. And he actually ran on a BJP ticket and won. So he's really not a working class hero. But in other words, you have the phenomena of A and B films that you find in North America. That is also going to become a big deal, I think. Now, it is important to remember in this context, while I talk about Bangalore and regional cinemas, it is the Hindi language cinema that has the nationwide audience. It is not the regional language cinema. So Kannada language film will circulate only in Karnataka and other diaspora markets. So it may come actually to New York City or Chicago. Rarely, but it does. Tamil cinema, for example, has a huge audience abroad. So the 20 or 25 languages in which Indian cinema gets made circulates widely in the world now. Now, this is also speculative to some extent. There are apparently 20 million Indians abroad, and about 1.3 million or 1.5 million in the United States. I don't know how many we have in Canada. I'm sure it is not 1 million. 560,000. And so it is UK, the traditional markets for these films in the past, for Indian films, used to be Africa, UK, even Fiji and other parts of the world. But now the dominant market is UK and USA and Canada. So let me just run through these. So the traditional markets are changing. In other words, the films that used to get made in Bombay or wherever would be sold to territorial markets like Africa. One print would get sold. It would be shown in Nairobi in a theater or in Dar es Salaam. And it would circulate in English-speaking Africa for a while. And it would actually circulate in West Africa as well, even in French-speaking part of the country. And I've always been amazed about this, that even when people didn't understand the language, but they understood how Indian film worked. And they would go watch these films in West Africa where they spoke French. And when they came here as students, they would tell me, I saw that film with Madhuri Dixit in it. So they knew the stars, and they knew the paradigm in which Indian film got made, and what was entertaining about it. So as the UK and the US markets take over, you would find this particular development affecting the way that Indian films get made. This is a theater called Naz in Los Angeles, probably one of the original theaters that started showing Indian films imported on a 35mm screen. And there's one in San Francisco, there's one in Los Angeles. There are many now across the country. There's about 24 cities in which there is at least one screen where Indian films are played regularly. Not a morning show or a matinee, but 4 or 5 shows per day. So that's a complete change from the 1970s and 1980s. This is the UGC Cinemas in England, which is a chain. And 20 years ago, if you went to a UGC cinema, you would not find an Indian film. But you actually can go and watch a film made for Indian audiences in a multiplex that used to attract only the so-called mainstream audience in these theaters. This is a multiplex in Chicago, AMC 30, which has 30 screens. And I actually went and watched Where is the Party Yar, in which the hero is actually my son-in-law. So I traveled 500 miles to go and watch this movie. So the critical thing to remember here, I think, is that the South Asian diaspora is considerable in size and importance. In the US and Canada territory, for example, while there may be only 1.5 million people, it's less than 0.05% of the population maybe, but 5% of the total number of engineers and scientists are of Indian descent. So these are the people with money. So if you go to Dallas and go to a theater, or you go to Chicago, where Gateway, which has got 1,700 seat capacity, on a Friday night you can't get in. Tickets, it's sold out. So when this market becomes important, in other words, India used to be the principal market for Indian films. When this market becomes important, where there's $100 million to be made out of this market for the Indian movie industry, you could actually think in terms of how content or style could change. It's difficult to make the case, but I will try to make the case. So I'm arguing here that a different film has emerged, which goes back to, in some way, connects to this open or liberalizing of the marketplace in India itself. Now, in many of these pictures that I'm interested in, post-1989 films, Bombay as a location itself has disappeared. A colleague of mine by the name Jyotsna Kapoor and I have written a paper focusing on a body of work where you don't see Bombay at all. There are people that show up in places you cannot identify where these people are from. And we're trying to make a case about what these films actually mean to the audiences both in India and abroad. So the breakthrough film that is looking at the potential of the marketplace abroad, particularly in the US and Canada, was a film called Hum Aapke Hai Kaun. And some of you would have seen it, and I've seen it so many times, and I can tell you, I can sing the songs for you. And I will have you look at a scene later on, but there are a number of films that emerged from that period. Hum Aapke Hai Kaun, which was made in 1994 by Tarachand Barjata's company, which was a huge success. It's families coming together, wedding. Of course, wedding is huge. And a whole slew of get made about dealing with this question of marriage that is centrally focused on marriage, love, and those relationships, which is the subject of most Indian film. But what is different about these pictures, these clips that I would like you to see, is how they treat the relationships between characters and what is it that they're trying to convey. Those of you who have seen it, you probably would agree with me. It is shamelessly trying to exploit the good feelings that immigrants have for their homeland. The principal characters in this film are so rich that they have mansions overlooking the New York City skyline and live a lifestyle that is beyond most, if not all, of the Indian immigrants living in the US and Canada. Now, that does not matter to the filmmaker, of course. So let me have you look at this song, and I'll return to a little bit of discussion. I think I'm going to have to keep Sadiq here. Is that too loud?
We want to go America, America, America.
London देखा, Paris देखा, London देखा, Paris देखा और देखा जापान, माइकल देखा, एल्विस देखा, सब देखा मेरी जान, सारे जग में कहीं नहीं है दूसरा हिंदुस्तान, दूसरा हिंदुस्तान, दूसरा हिंदुस्तान.
Now, the guy in the hat who was on a boat doing this, My India, that's Subhash Ghai. He, in the way Hitchcock used to insert himself into his pictures, Subhash Ghai makes sure that he not only inserts himself into his pictures, but he's explicitly seen. You can't miss him. Now, here you have, I mean, this is a long segment. It's about 7 minutes long. Usually songs are about 3.5 to 5 minutes long. It's very, very long. And all the symbolism that you found there, from Fatehpur Sikri to the Agra Fort, to the shot over the Ganga, and Taj at the end. So he's trying to put everything that you can imagine, the things that people who are living abroad have been connected or disconnected with the past for a long time. You want to see these images. He's banking on this deep feeling that we have for the country. But the song, those of you who understood Hindi, the word is compared to a bride, a beautiful bride. You have feminists would have a lot to say about this. Feminization of the nation and the world is going on here. Subhash Ghai is not known to be a very sophisticated filmmaker, by the way, right, in terms of treatment of gender. Neither is the popular Indian cinema when it comes to Indian gender. But what you found there was this idealized rural family with the grandparents, uncles and aunts, and women, of course, making food and bringing it over. So it's in terms of nostalgia, for many of us who came from rural India, this really serves it up very nicely. And that's its credibility with the audience.